Welcome back to Bottom Line Africa. The Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency is a new agency established on the 9th of August 2019 by the government for promotion of exports and branding the country after merging the Export Promotion Council and Brand Kenya Board following a presidential directive to reform the public sector and reduce duplication in public service. Well, to help us understand more about the strategic direction of this organization is guest Peter Biwott, who is the CEO of the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, now known as Brand.ke, as well as Mark Bichachi, a board member at the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, and also a regular contributor here at KTN News. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on Bottom Line Africa.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's begin with you, Mr. Biwott. It is no longer Brand Kenya, the name that slips off the tongue so easily. Talk to us about these changes and what this means now in terms of branding Kenya.
Thank you very much, Michelle. You're talking about merging of the former Export Promotion Council and the Brand Kenya Board. And the idea was to create a very strong institution that is going to assist the country to carry out trade promotion as well as country branding. Just focusing on how is the country doing in terms of exports, how is the country doing in terms of tourism, heritage and culture and investment. So basically that's our role, and we are up and running, and strongly so.
It's an interesting change, considering that manufacturing is a big point of focus under the development agenda's Big Four. Talk to us, Mark, about what this is likely to change in terms of selling Kenya and selling local manufacturers.
One of the key things that we need to understand is, as the clamor for creating jobs for young people is rising and rising, the only way to do so is through manufacturing. But if you manufacture, you need a place for these goods to go. And the only place that those goods can go is outside of Kenya. And let's remember that Kenya has signed the free trade agreement for all of Africa. It has bilateral agreements with China, with the United States, and all these people. So the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency's job is to ensure that Kenya has a market for its products, and that's then a double-fold story, because we've got to tell a good story about the country, brand it correctly, so that there's at least a great demand for our goods. And what that is likely to change for Kenya is that, number one, more jobs for young people, but also more foreign exchange for the country, which then will boost our economy.
Absolutely. And Biwott, not very long ago, we had a Made in Kenya brand, or mark rather, that was launched to help authenticate Kenyan-made goods in the wake of so much competition globally. What impact has this mark made so far?
Maybe just to add on what Mark has said, if you look at the presidential speech that he did recently, he talked about tea sector, for example, where he said, if you look at Sri Lanka, what they are doing is, because of their value addition in the manufacturing sector in that country, they export low volumes of tea, but they earn more value than Kenya. So so manufacturing is the way to go. One of the ways to alleviate poverty actually and create jobs for the country is to focus on value addition and value expansion. So focusing on the Big Four manufacturing is really good for the country, and the outlook shows that if we can enhance and expand our manufacturing, our country actually can be able to achieve our economic goals. But when it comes to now the Made in Kenya mark, it's about showcasing the country. It's about what comes from our country. When you go outside there, we've been in various trade promotion activities in China and other countries, and you find that countries like Rwanda have already advanced in the manner in which they showcase their products or what they are able to produce, either it's a good or a service. So in China, we were able to see the way Rwandese are marketing their coffee, for example. The first thing you see is Rwanda coffee. So this is something that we are currently working on to ensure that a lot of our exports actually position the country first, so that we know these are tea produced in Kenya. This is maybe coffee produced in Kenya, so that our country can be recognized, because there is a lot of significance to talk about made in Kenya. First of all, we are a country in the tropics. That means a lot. So our coffee, our tea is one of the best high-quality coffees in the world. So that is what it means. And once you we position and make sure that it is made in Kenya, known across the world, then you get that value and you get that benefit out of it.
Mark, the local manufacturing industry in itself has received quite a boost after the unveiling of the Big Four. But when it comes to value addition, like the CEO speaks of here, has Kenya gotten into that space where it encourages value addition, or is still focusing more on traditional crops and selling the same on the market?
To be quite honest, if you look at our top foreign exchange earner, it's still tea, and that tea is still exported as is. And then it goes and gets mixed with other teas, and then you will see English tea when a third of it is actually Kenyan tea. So we've not gotten into that space. And I'm picking on tea specifically because, as the CEO pointed out, it's something that the president has talked about, and it's something that the government and Brand.ke is actually well placed to help in this process. It's actually part of our mandate. When the president says that we need to take 20% and do value addition to it, that's exactly what we're talking about. A lot of what we export out of this country is going out raw to be processed and finished elsewhere. So the interventions that the government is doing and the export promotion activities that we are doing, some of which we'll elucidate here, are going to boost this sector quite a bit. Because it's one thing to give tax incentives, it's another thing to work on the cost of energy. It's another thing that after these goods are produced, there's a market for them. And that's really what Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency is about. It's just trying to make sure that there's a market to receive our goods. And is there space for this in Kenya? Yes, there is. There is space in gum arabica, there is space in tea and coffee, there is space in the exporting of plastics and other things that we manufacture here. There's cashew nuts and all of these things. There's the mineral wealth that we have. So there's a lot of things that Kenya can produce that can also be exported. But let's not also forget that the simple things that we manufacture in Kenya are also exported. Our juices are exported to Uganda and Tanzania. Uganda being one of our biggest markets as is. Our juices, our milk, our cheese, all of those things. So it's not just the new industries. So let's say new coffee manufacturing industries that we're talking about, but we're also talking about guys who produce ketchup. Can they begin to sell in the United States under AGOA, for example? That's what we are looking at. Just both new industries and new markets, but also old industries expanding those markets that they reach.
All right, and that being said, Biwott, let's talk about the export incentives then that would attract Kenyan farmers, Kenyan manufacturers, so to speak, to come and be part of this. Because for the longest time, there have been challenges accessing this market to begin with. There have been talks of perhaps a cartel or only the rich and mighty being able to export their produce. What will be different now with the relaunch of this organization?
I think one of the biggest investments that we want to do is to focus on trade information. In fact, there is a study which has been done by the Africa Export-Import Bank, and it shows that one of the leading binding constraints why Africa, for example, is not trading within itself is because of lack of trade information. So that's the bottom line. I think the question of access to market, our country has been able to do a lot. You can see that Kenya was the first country to actually sign and ratify the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We have the AGOA market and others. So what is very important is to link and ensure that through what we have established, which is called a trade information center, which we want to roll out and partner with counties, so that each of the counties can be able to set up a trade information center where if you want to learn about Africa, for example, what can we sell to Nigeria? You will be able to get what can we sell to Uganda? What are we selling to EU, and what can we scale up? So focusing on ensuring that we also create that information portal, because we are currently coming up with a Made in Kenya portal where when Kenyans want to know the slice and size of the pie, they can be able to access. We are also coming up with an app to see how can Kenyans be able to get the opportunity map of the whole country and just venture into those opportunities and make money.
All right. What milestones would you say have been established so far in terms of global and regional positioning?
Of course, as I told you, Africa, for example, Kenya is exporting a lot to the African continent. If you look at the European Union, Kenya is doing very well in countries like the UK. We are now going to Germany. We will be having Fruits Logistica in early February. And look at AGOA. Kenya is also enjoying a surplus trade with the US market. although there are a lot of opportunities that still needs to be tapped. Look at China, for example. The president has been in China last year for several times. We were in the Road and Belt conference. We went to the first China International Import Expo. And as a result of this engagement with the Chinese buyer, Kenya actually today can boast of an increase in exports of up to 74% of our flowers, our avocado, our products and services as well. I'm aware about banks which have already opened subsidiary branches in Beijing because a lot of Chinese investors are coming to Africa, and the first stop is Kenya actually. So this is what we can post about as a country and say, yes, we have achieved this far.
All right, and Mark, talk to us about the importance now of this organization in the wake of, like you mentioned, the Continental Free Trade Area. It is a buzzword everywhere now, looking to boost revenues within Africa through African countries, for Africa, by Africa.
Yes.
How impactful, how much more impactful is it likely to be now?
Africa has a population in the billions. Africa has resources in the trillions. Therefore, if Africa was to trade with Africa, the opportunity is huge. Now, the question should actually be, is Kenya well positioned to do so? Now, geographically, it is. It is easier to get to parts of Congo from Kenya through Mombasa than it is through Kinshasa. Right. So the opportunity geographically exists. Do we have the manpower within the Kenyan population to deliver on this? Yes, we do. We have brilliant people. In fact, Kenya has a trade surplus in terms of exporting our services. That tells you that the Kenyan individual is well sought after. Thirdly, is the government positioning Kenya to market itself well? We've just given you the example of the Chinese market, where our exports to China increased by 74% just by the activities of the president and the activities of this agency in participating in the Beijing Expo. So we've seen a direct correlation between when government and agencies such as ourselves begin to intervene in actually marketing our country. Thirdly, our products, and not just our agricultural products, but our products in general, thanks to our standards and things like that, are generally better than the products around in the continent. So we also have a competitive advantage. I'll tell you for free, if you go to Uganda, to Tanzania today, and you took a cup of yogurt made in Tanzania and a cup of yogurt made in Kenya, you would tell the difference based on the quality. So we also have that quality advantage, and that made in Kenya mark actually means something when you cross our borders. That said, the opportunity is huge for Kenya, and as the CEO has said, and this is something that I think we've put advertisements out there to call out to Kenyan businessmen to begin to look externally for their market. The biggest problem that we have in this country is a lot of people think it's very difficult to export, but our job is to make information available, but also to remove the barriers that actually make it difficult for people to trade outside the country. So we're breaking barriers in Germany, we are breaking barriers in the United States, we are breaking barriers in Dubai, we are participating in Expo Dubai 2020, just to make sure that our entrepreneurs, our business people, our manufacturers, our farmers even have an opportunity to increase what is coming into their pockets, because they're not just looking at Wanjiko and Achieng next door to buy their products, but they now can look at Mustafa and Mr. Steve living outside there to buy Kenyan products, and that's how we will build Kenya.
Absolutely. We're almost out of time. Biwa, talk to us about with the launch, like you mentioned, being sometime in March, April, how will the Kenyan farmer, the Kenyan businessman, the Kenyan manufacturer get access to a foreign market?
Now, even before I talk about that, there is an opportunity here for Kenyans. We buy more than we export to outside of the country. We have a deficit of about 1.1 trillion Kenya shillings. What that means is there's a big opportunity for Kenyans to take advantage of the current export incentives. As we speak, the president is launching a special economic zone in Naivasha. Right. There are already other special economic zones which have already been launched, or export processing zones in the country. Our infrastructure has been done, our SGR is complete. So the opportunity for the country is for Kenyans or Kenyan entrepreneurs to find a way of being in the space of production and value addition, so that as that train is leaving Mombasa to Nairobi and Naivasha and other places, we feel it as it goes back, so that our airlines can be able to actually ship our products to ship our Kenyans, because you have to look at services as well. And as we move forward, I think we're going to have a big launch about ourselves. We want to see how can we be able as an agency reach as many Kenyans as possible. How can we talk? How can we be, and we know that to be able to reach to many Kenyans, we have to be online, looking at the buy from Kenya, portals. How can we have, modern applications where we can be able to reach to the Kenyan youth? Because I can tell you, because of lack of that trade information, many Kenyans today, if you look and follow in the social media, might not be aware about a lot of the opportunities that actually exist in the country. So sometimes around end of March, we're going to launch brand.ke so that we reach out to every Kenyan in the country and those who are outside the country, because we also want to tap into the global stock of Kenyan diaspora. We have Kenyans outside there who are already living abroad. So if we want to promote Kenya in the UK, we have Kenyans in the UK, in Africa, and all of these places. Actually, during the last Dar es Salaam International Trade Fair in 2018, we were able to interact with diaspora in Tanzania. And Kenyans were telling us, please, you guys, can you engage us? We want to sell made in Kenya in Tanzania. And they were giving us hints about that market intelligence. So this is what we are positioning ourselves to do. And we hope that Kenyans will support us, because this is the only way the country can move forward. If we can rally many Kenyans to support what we do.
All right, Mark, we're out of time.
If you can,
very
30 seconds.
briefly.
Yes, so if Kenyans can go onto www.brand.ke, they'll be able to find information on the expos that we are participating in. So, for example, next month we're going to Fruit Logistica in Germany. That's talking about fruits and vegetables. We're going to Dubai 2020. We're still looking for people who want to export to Dubai to work with us. We're going to the United States for the coffee exhibition and to do a road show in the United States. We want people to participate. And we have partnership, we've got discounted flights and things like that, just to help our business people succeed out there. So please, if you need to visit us, 16th floor Anniversary Towers, please come and see us. There'll be someone who will receive you, and I'll personally buy you a cup of coffee.
All right, well, the CBK governor says it is going to be a good year with economic growth at about 6%. So with that assistance from brand.ke, it should be a good year for Kenyans in the country. Many thanks. That is Peter Biwott, CEO of the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, brand.ke, as well as Mark Bichachi, who is a board member at the organization. That conversation bringing us to a close on Bottom Line Africa today. Many thanks for watching. My name is Michelle.